The Amazing World of Gumball, for some reason, doesn't pop up immediately in a lot of people's heads, cartoon fans or otherwise. It is criminal.
Hold it right there, buddy. We're gonna do this a little differently. The 5th season of The Amazing World of Gumball has long since concluded, and the series is currently 1/3 into its 6th and supposedly final season. Well, I believe it's the final season anyway, but hey, don't let my realism stop your optimism. While Season 6 is still underway, I nonetheless want to take the opportunity to revise a countdown that I made 2 years ago. Yes, you heard it right. This is the one and only C.R. Martin's Top 10 Episodes of The Amazing World of Gumball 2018 edition. Before we begin, allow me to lay down one ground rule. Just one. One important rule. This updated list will not contain any episodes from Season 6. I want this list to be as consistent as possible, which sadly means the exclusion of an ongoing season. I acknowledge that Season 6 has some standout hits, most notably the faith and the shippening, but you see, I don't want to put in an episode from an ongoing season because an episode of similar or superior quality might come our way. In which case, I or you guys would more often than not have a nagging urge to kick my ass for making such boneheaded exclusions. Plus, it allows the current season to fully metamorphose into its identity over time. And when the time comes that I have to revisit this list once again, i.e. when Season 6 is over, I'll have a clearer perspective on the entire series, and those episodes will all have a fighting chance. Now that my lengthy justification is done, let's begin. Number 10. The Compilation. Here's a good way to kick off a top 10 list. One of the non-standard episodes of the series, The Compilation might seem like an odd choice for an entry in this list. What the episode is a catalog of unrelated stories that spotlight the eccentricities of Elmore and its inhabitants, some of the scenes being snippets from past episodes. These individual tales all culminate into a final musical number that brings them all full circle. The biggest draw of this episode is its thematic resonance. The disconnect of these stories encapsulates two themes that are subtly central to the amazing world of Gumball: individuality and deviance. Themes that are expressive in the show in numerous ways. Between the large assortment of media that the show employs, the idiosyncratic characters, and the broad general appeal of the show that touches on many human sensibilities. And in a way, The Compilation is reflective of the series as a whole. Both are seemingly disjointed and disorganized, yet enrapturing and beautiful through that disconnect. This is even expressed through the wonderful musical number at the end. Just have a listen. I would love to sing a karaoke version of this. The Compilation, a summation of the very essence of Gumball, and thus poignant on multiple fronts. Number 9. The Joy. This episode is just so good. One thing you can count on Gumball for is creating an immaculate atmosphere. By virtue of both a knowledge and respect for the source materials in question, the writing team consistently do a damn good job of replicating their inspirations to the point of even surpassing them in some respects. A shining example of this is The Joy from Season 3. Not only is this episode a lavish love letter to the horror genre, but it's also an excellent rendition of the genre. The ingenuous setup that's saccharine on a surface level but very unsettling underneath, the methodical, gradual, and laser-precise pacing, and the superb cinematography all work together to construct a downright creepy environment. Oh, and did I mention the musical score? I think I might have in my previous list, but just in case I didn't, the music is awesome. Special mention goes to Ludwig van Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata.
Yoshitaka's the cure!
Now all we need is Ave Maria, and we're all set. And by the by, Ben, guys, again! You had a missed opportunity in your hands. You could have quoted one of the most famous lines in horror, but you didn't. If there was ever any chance to do that, it was right here. You know what I'm talking about.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
Yeah, that one. Game over, man. Game over. Creepy, intricately paced, impressively shot, the joy is the very definition of putting a disarming front and catching an audience off guard with something truly, wonderfully terrifying. Number 8. The Bus. Oh, Hollywood. You and your fascination for blowing shit out of proportion. The Bus is essentially the same case as the Joy. It's an affectionate imitation of a well-established genre in its standards and cliches. Whereas the Joy marvelously recreates the horror genre, the Bus replicates the big-budget, over-the-top action genre that is most commonplace during the summer season. The whole episode pretty much plays out like an action flick, though, of course, with Gumball's unique touches. Time bombs, ransoms, high-octane car chases, a mystery surrounding who the perpetrator is, action sequences that are awesome yet improbable, and a one-liner here and there. A lot of bells and whistles you expect from your typical action flick can be found in this episode, and the writers have done a bang-up job with them. When it comes down to it though, the executions of both the Joy and the Bus are exactly the same, i.e. they're both very good. But I put the Bus just slightly higher than the Joy. Part of it is my own personal bias. Not gonna lie, I enjoy my occasional fix for the action genre, threadbare narratives notwithstanding. And the other part is because of the episode's own merits, some of which appeal to me better than the Joy's merits. The first is making Gumball the only sane person amongst his classmates and the adults.
But they're clearly our parents trying to teach us some sort of lesson. Principal Brown hasn't even changed his name. So I assume you all ended up in a life of crime through skipping school? Well, I guess the lesson you've actually taught is that crime does pay. Well done, chaps. You've done good.
This might seem like it came completely out of left field, but keep in mind that this portrayal has been around since even as early as Season 1. And this portrayal fits because it allows Gumball, and by extension the audience, to poke fun at and have fun with these cliches. And one of the show's main draws is its meta-level degree of self-awareness and the incorporation of the meta-sense into its narratives.
We just wanted to teach you that skipping school isn't cool or exciting.
By involving us in $1 million high-speed police chase, which is probably the most cool or exciting thing we've ever done. Thanks, man! Fighting on the wing of a plane is way more fun than math class!
This isn't supposed to be fun.
Speaking of meta, this is also another episode in one of the series' main story arcs, the Robin Avoid saga. While the Bus doesn't contribute to the arc itself as much as the other episodes in it do, this is the episode where we see the extent of Rob's hatred for Gumball and his desire for vengeance. It's also where he really ups the ante in his villainy and solidifies himself as a competent, credible, and major threat. So, in that sense, the episode makes enough of a contribution that it builds excitement for the rest of the story arc. And don't worry, this won't be the last time I talk about this particular arc. But before I get ahead of myself, I'm just gonna say that The Bus is a fantastic episode, both individually and in terms of the bigger picture. Number 7. The Copycats. A perennial favorite in the wake of Season 5's gradual decline. The Copycats is what happens when you want to give something an ass-kicking on the biggest stage ever. The fact that this episode is about an infamous shameless Chinese imitation of the show already lands at some points by default, but it's the lengths to which the writers take this premise that truly make the episode. This is the show's self-awareness at its purest and most unfiltered, and as demonstrated by this episode, its form is entirely tangible and can take on different guises while remaining true to the machinations of the writers or Ben himself. It can be simple and blunt, or masquerade itself as a cheerful show tune.
Be your own you, be your own you. Don't do what I do, just be your own you.
But one thing that remains consistent is the jaded nature. Take this scene for example.
I left the iron on and left the candle burning next to the curtains. I forgot to leave the stove on!
That really did happen, everyone. If you thought Gumball was really pushing its luck before, you ain't seen nothing yet. In a show that constantly blurs the fine line between childish and mature, The Copycats throws you for a loop with its brand of humor. Yes, the show has cynicism written all over it, and it only became more cynical as the seasons went by, but when one gets to the implications of these scenes, he or she has to wonder how the hell this even got past the censors in the first place. It is nothing short of therapeutic and satisfying, especially to someone who's followed the show since the beginning, like yours truly. But don't let any of this give you the wrong idea. Even with the episode's jadedness and catharsis, rest assured that the writers meant no ill will when they made this episode. Perhaps an even bigger reason why the episode is so good is its relevance. For how gloriously it thrashes Miracle Star, it also doubles as a mouthpiece. When you get down to it, the Copycats' main themes are originality and plagiarism. How the former is increasingly difficult to achieve, at least in its purest sense, and how this difficulty can directly or indirectly lead to the latter. For artists and creators in general, this episode can speak to them on that level. What makes it all the more relevant is that the episode's handling of these themes is not exclusive to the context of Miracle Star. Be Your Own You, for example, can be played in and fit any similar context or scenario. So besides being well written, funny, and satisfying, there's a depth to the Copycats that'll surprise anyone upon its discovery and lead to a better appreciation for it. What more can you want?
You guys good? No! Good enough.
Number 6. The money. Watch yourself, Chowder. You've got some stiff competition coming your way. The Money is the finale of Season 3, and I can't think of a better episode to end a solid season with. Like with the Copycats, the concept is automatically novel, but the execution is absolute genius. If the fourth wall wasn't already shattered, this time around, it's just annihilated. The central idea here is that money is a necessity in everyday life, so much so that the desire for it often leads to the abandonment of one's morality and principles. Without it, everything around you more or less falls apart. The Money's implementation of this idea is brilliant on both a visual front and a narrative one. On its own, it features the tried and true Gumball brand of self-aware and satirical comedy. Between Gumball's pseudo-philosophical diatribe at the beginning and the musical number in the middle, the episode hits many familiar comedic notes. Where the comedy really skyrockets to a whole new level is the final act of the episode. The gradual disintegration of the show is a visceral and imaginative experience that is the very definition of minimalism at its finest. It goes from full-fledged animation, to wireframes, to storyboards, to simplistic stick figures on sticky notes. And all the while, this minimalist approach remains both functional and effective. Hell, I think that it's more effective because of these limitations.
It's over there. Oh, I meant that way. We'll do the commercial!
Then hurry up before it's too late.
All of this is already amazing, but it gets even better. Putting the last 3 minutes into perspective adds a whole new layer of brilliance to this marvelous episode. When you think about it, this humor is incredibly apt in the context of animation, since the medium is so dependent on money and resources, and the fact that Gumball, an animated series that is more expensive than usual, is addressing the subject matter in the first place makes this even more appropriate. I don't know if Ben and the writers intended for this or not, but I still give them kudos regardless. If you want an episode that'll make you feel like $1,000,000 after watching it, it's The Money.
Finally a place I can call home! Thank you, Joyful Burger!
Number 5. The Job. Held in high regard back then, still held in high regard now, and for good reason. We all know the turn of events for the series early in its lifespan. Season 2 was a dramatic change and improvement over its serviceable, yet prototypical predecessor. This is the season that saw the art style mostly shift into its present state. The character designs went from mostly pointed to mostly rounded, the color palette was diversified, and the movements became stiffer and more deliberate. Changes that were ultimately for the better. But I say mostly because there were aspects that had yet to be changed, namely the oval-shaped eyes and the lighting and shadows that were on the darker side of the spectrum. Conceptually, the show's untapped potential had been unlocked, potential that couldn't be realized in the first season because of its derivative nature. Characters were more consistent in portrayal and richly developed, the satirical, cynical, and self-aware elements had fully blossomed in this season, with individual plots being more involved and elaborate than before, and the comedy in general had stepped it up a notch or 10. There's been a debate as to where precisely Gumball found its stride and made its mark. For me personally, I go by the popular belief that the job was the precise turning point for Gumball. This episode is emblematic of the changes brought about by the season and solidifies Gumball as a force to be reckoned with in all of animation. It just does so many things right. The self-awareness and cynicism that are characteristic of the show by now may have been experimented with in Season 1, but here, not only are they both fully realized, but the examples within the episode continue to stand as some of the best within the series. The infamous dead baby joke is still as potent a scene as it was 6 years ago.
Siciliana! Come see what the stork brought us!
Oh, look! He's got his father's eyes! Oh, he's beautiful!
Thank you so much. Here's a 20.
And the use of the status quo as a constant motif is an evolutionary step from the rudimentary implementations of meta-level humor in the previous season. Just as good, or perhaps even better, is the significant retooling of Richard's character. He essentially went from a selfish, gluttonous douche to a more endearing, goofy, and likable husband and father to his family. This is wonderfully demonstrated by his motivations in the episode. He didn't land his pizza delivery guy job for free pizza. Okay, he kinda did, but there's more to it than just that. And the shenanigans are nothing short of funny. Oh, and before it slips my mind, the job is also a visual treat. Namely, the shifts to multiple art styles is gorgeous. So good. So good. The job. The next step for the Amazing World of Gumball, and a really damn good episode in its own right. This is one I'll be coming back to again and again and again. Number 4. The Fury. Nicole is my favorite character in the series, alongside Gumball himself. She's everything you could ever want in a mom, while also embodying the qualities of an actual mom. Her easily ignited anger is matched only by her love and devotion to her family. She cares for her husband and her children, and woe to the fool who would incur her wrath by inviting harm upon them. While she is an idealistic portrayal of a working-class parent, her down-to-earth traits still make her a relatable character as opposed to an unattainable template of what a parent should be. No other episode makes use of these two sides to Nicole to their utmost than The Fury. Yes, I know about the anime fight scene and I will get to it. But there's more to the episode than just a gorgeous 3-minute high-octane scene. On its own, the episode is excellently done. The most obvious merit of the episode is the characters. This is Nicole at her absolute best. Well, one of her best. Episodes of the past that were centered on Nicole do indeed play around with both her relatable and badass qualities, but there's an intimacy to the way The Fury handles them. It transforms them from idiosyncrasies to much more meaningful elements. And I can forgive the cookie-cutter nature of the backstory itself because it fits with the mood and atmosphere the episode was constructing. Similarly, Yuki Yoshida manages to be a wonderful and funny catalyst to the conflict, while simultaneously being a well-done standalone character and a great antithesis to Nicole. One may not see it at first glance, but upon closer inspection, there's thematic resonance behind the interactions between these two. Nicole is hardworking and has earned her dues through constant, consistent effort on her part, while Yuki, despite working just as hard to earn her dues, has had a lot of things given to her on a silver platter.
I'm sorry, Yuki, you win. I don't want any trouble.
You're not half the person I used to know. Your butt, on the other hand, is twice the size.
OMG.
It was nice seeing you, Yuki.
Coward! Where is your owner? Fight me!
This ideological collision makes their chemistry more potent and their struggle all the more believable, even with the spectacle the episode puts on and thrives on. For the more minor side of things, Richard and the kids are also well written. Richard comforting Nicole may be a small moment, but a pleasant and charming touch that shows that he does indeed care for his wife.
Nicole, I think we need better toothpaste. What? Is there something wrong with my hair? Does it look better with the hat? I think it goes really well with my eyes. Come on, you.
Meanwhile, the kids, and this includes Masami, might only be spectators in the episode, but the conflict between their respective mothers has enough of an effect on all of them, and the episode embellishes this to make the scope feel that much grander. It would have been nice for them to act upon their concern more, and they do so to an extent, but it's not really needed because the episode is not about them. Now, as for the anime fight scene, it's amazing. Definitely one of the best individual moments in the show. Between the deliberate stiffness of the characters' movements, the use of speed lines, sweat drops, and anger veins, the limited lip movements, the pristine lighting and shadows, and the varied camera shots and angles, the scene faithfully recreates the anime medium and even puts a number of anime in the shonen genre to shame. Studio 4C really outdid themselves when they animated this scene, and no amount of applause can do them justice. It's the icing and cherry on top of an already delicious cake.
How? I have been through the most grueling training on the planet.
Which school taught you? Was it Hokuto? Was it Konoha? Or was it Mr. Miyagi?
No, it was the school of life. I have raised 3 kids and 1 husband.
The Fury is an exhilarating and dramatically charged romp that'll leave you at the edge of your seat. Funny, badass, profound, and poignant, it's the best of all worlds. Shut up, Hannah! Number 3. The Origins, Parts 1 and 2. Yes, I'm counting 2-parters as one entry. The Origins is a delightful pair of episodes that is all sorts of adorable. For a primarily episodic show such as Gumball, continuity, much less a backstory, are the last things that would ever come to anyone's mind. As evident in the previous entries in this list, the show has a unique talent of pulling off aspects that are deviant from its core. Not only are these episodes gut-bustingly hilarious, not only are they full of wonderful individual moments, but they flesh out the characters in a surprising and remarkable way. And they do this in spite of their saccharine nature. And I'm sorry, did I say in spite of their saccharine nature? I mean, they do this through their saccharine nature. A reliance on the cuteness factor comes with the risk of the empirical qualities in storytelling being left in the wayside. Basic characterization and narrative can, and sometimes, unfortunately, do take a backseat in favor of the embellishment of saccharine qualities. This makes the plot in question a miserable dreck to tread through, and whatever triumphant resolution the narrative goes for either gets lost in translation or feels undeserved. And oftentimes, it doesn't even have to involve anything cutesy per se. As long as it elicits, or better yet yanks endearment from an audience, that's usually all it takes to send a story into a downward spiral. Hello SETI, you lumbering hunk of dog shit. What The Origins does that sometimes gets lost on shows or movies is it understands that it's designed to be adorable. The interactions between the Watersons, not just Gumball and Darwin, are enough to make even the hardest of hearts melt, but they don't come at the expense of the narrative and the characters.
Are you copying me?
The narrative is allowed to progress at a natural and coherent pace, and the characters all partake in the conflict while their personalities remain intact. Hell, I'll even say that the cuteness factor directly influences and initiates the conflict. Yeah, I'm being serious. Think about it. Everything that transpires in these episodes is because of the closeness amongst the Wattersons, especially Gumball and Darwin. The entire plot begins with that bond and ends with that bond, without a single aspect overshadowing the other. That is what can and unfortunately does get lost sometimes on a number of cartoons out there. For that, I applaud this two-parter. Take note, future cartoonists. If you want to create your own animated series or film built around the idea of cute, The Origins is the blueprint you're looking for. Wow, I really just spent all that time analyzing cuteness in a cartoon, didn't I? What is life, am I right? Number 2. The Disaster and the Rerun. Coming in as the runner-up for this list is the second two-parter of the series, and perhaps the boldest and most groundbreaking of all the episodes in this list, The Disaster and the Rerun. 2 episodes that had me at the edge of my seat, 2 episodes I hold nothing but utmost respect for. If you're still not convinced that Gumball can pull off continuity exceptionally well, despite it being episodic in nature, then these episodes are sure to dissuade those doubts. The Disaster and the Rerun are the culmination of one of Gumball's major story arcs, the Robin Avoid Saga. 5 years worth of world building, character development, speculation within the fanbase, and teasing from the show come together in a grand-scale ride full of tension, action, emotion, drama, and a series' now trademark flavor of humor and self-awareness. To make a long story short, this is an unbelievable experience you won't be forgetting anytime soon. Ben and his team went all out with giving the best the series has to offer and so much more. The characters are all at the top of their game in this two-parter. Gumball proving himself a more than worthy protagonist and one of the best kid characters in fiction, and Rob cementing himself as a similarly worthy antagonist.
I am in control, and the time has come for you to pay.
Same for you, buddy. That remote was $12.99.
And the status quo thankfully is nowhere in sight to interfere with such excellent and timely characterization. Everyone does act like their usual selves, but this two-parter knows when to break away from those habits. To say nothing of the concept put in motion, which is sheer creative and storytelling genius. If you thought the job and the money broke the fourth wall, then this two-parter obliterates it. This two-parter has what I believe to be one of the best uses of the meta-concept I've ever seen in fiction. The characters acknowledge that the colorful, imaginative world around them is a fictional one born from the equally colorful, imaginative mind of a single person, and made for the entertainment of the masses the world over, watching in the comfort of their homes.
You being the hero of all this means that I have to be the villain. But I never wanted to be the villain! I wanted to be the cute sidekick who gets his own plush toy in a spin-off show.
What are you talking about?
You really don't get it, do you? So happy to star in your amazing world. Can't you see that none of this is real?
And this awareness is a recurring motif throughout these episodes. The way this motif is used gives a sense of urgency and desperation that one would never have expected from the show. Because the characters know that they are indeed in a show, and because they're directly tampering with its foundation, the dangers presented are escalated to greater heights that it can lead one to believe that they are in fact real. It's the type of bold storytelling that the finest of raconteurs employ, and it was done so by a British cartoonist and his colleagues. Bravo, Ben. Bravo. Speaking of the meta-concept and the show's general self-awareness, The Disaster and the Rerun go even further on a thematic standpoint. The characters' non-standard depictions here make even more sense when you take into account that the foundation of the world is put on the brink. Gumball, Darwin, Anais, and Rob, they don't revert to their basic personalities as per the status quo because said status quo is in danger of being irreversibly altered. Like with the other entries in this list, I don't know if Ben was necessarily thinking about such nuances during production, but I still give him and his team additional props. This two-parter is perhaps the show at its most impactful and meaningful. Between the many aforementioned elements coming together in grand fashion and the risks that Ben and his crew took, the disaster in the rerun leave a powerful mark on the viewers that urges them to evaluate their favorite works of fiction and makes them believe the possible impermanence of said works and appreciate them better. It's a vulnerability that something like the equally meta Undertale or Avengers Infinity War leave you with. I love these episodes for all these reasons and more. The disaster in the rerun will go down as one of the greatest amongst Cartoon Network's individual episodes. They've set a very high bar for the rest of the network's catalog, and I'll be interested to see if that bar can be reached.
I look forward to being your enemy again in the future.
Huh. Me too. Goodbye.
Truly fantastic, truly memorable. Be that as it may, this is just the number 2 spot. There's still one episode that surpasses them, even if only ever so slightly. What could it be? We'll find out after the honorable mentions. Now this section of the video is going to work a little differently from how I did it 2 years ago. The honorable mentions will be comprised of 3 episodes from each season, and once again, there will be no episodes from Season 6. Ready? Let's go! Season 1. The DVD. The Curse. The Helmet. Season 2. The Storm. The Tape. The Finale. Season 3. The Kids. The Countdown. The Downer. Season 4. The Nemesis. The Romantic. The Blame. Season 5. The Matchmaker. The Console. The Puppets. Number 1. The Shall and the Choices, a two-way tie. I know, it's a total cop-out from yours truly, but you know what? Both these episodes deserve and earn the number 1 spot, and I've thought this through since I first worked on this list. I already know what I'm gonna say so that this doesn't come off as too much of a cop-out. Now, if you'll kindly afford me the opportunity to speak for myself and these episodes, let us begin. The shell and the choices are, without hyperbole, the finest to ever come from the creative mind of Ben Beauclair. They stand as examples of both the amazing world of Gumball being a tour de force of animation and the untold potential of the medium. And personally, these episodes are very special to me. First off is the shell. In case I haven't made it abundantly clear in the past, Gumball and Penny are one of the best romantic couples in all of fiction. Their relationship is a thing of genuine endearment, which is more than what can be said about a majority of romances in fiction. A big part of what makes their relationship so endearing is their awareness of the other's feelings, on top of a conscious effort to act on their own respective feelings. They make their affection known to the other and do everything in their power to take it a step further, only to be held back not by their own misgivings, but outside forces getting in the way of their relationship. And the best part is, the show doesn't force the endearment upon the audience. It allows the relationship to speak for itself, thus endearing itself based on its own merits. There's no overly mushy dialogue that tries way too hard for its own good. The aesthetics don't become an overkill of saturn and warm colors, love hearts, and uncomfortable mugging for the camera. Gumball and Penny act like an actual couple, which sounds so simple on paper, but you'd be surprised to find is so lost on a lot of other fictional couples. They are a sight for sore eyes in the midst of these romantic missteps because of this. And no other episode paints a clearer picture of that than The Shell. The superb characterization, the engaging narrative, the dramatic and emotional gravity, the ravishing animation, and just the overall grandiose feel of it. This episode is the complete package. It's magnificent. You know how I said that Gumball's continuity, while ultimately secondary, is incredibly rich and well executed, and that it's capable of achieving the pinnacle of storytelling mastery as wonderfully demonstrated in The Disaster and the Rerun? Well, The Shell was the first to do it, and damn, it did it very well. This episode is the culmination of 2 whole seasons worth of speculation leading up to that point. For the better part of the last 3 years, the fanbase has been achingly asking questions regarding both Gumball and Penny's relationship and Penny's true form under her shell. Questions acknowledged within the show proper and teased in such a way that actually constructs the show's universe in bite-sized pieces and progresses the narrative. That seems like a throwaway aspect to some people, but to me, that's the makings of a compelling story. When you bring up the theories cultivated within your audience, whether blatantly or subtly, you encourage them to become even more invested in the story you're trying to tell. And I'm not talking about unapologetically pandering to your audience. I'm talking about playing with their expectations and constantly leaving them at the edge of their seats, leading up to the ultimate resolution. And because these speculations have become so rampant amongst the Gumball fanbase, because the crew pays attention to every aspect circulating their show, people end up caring so much about the story arc. People have cared so much about the characters and their struggles that they want to sit through this ride all the way to the end. They don't mind going on this journey, and in fact, enjoy it as much as their destination. That is the best way I can describe The Shell, an enthralling journey that you'll never forget and might even want to go back to again and again and again. The likable ensemble of characters are at some of their best here, especially the protagonist, whose affection for his beloved becomes a driving force that brings out the absolute best qualities in him.
Whatever is inside, we can deal with it together.
Together?
Together. Now, with all due respect, I'm gonna have to ask you to shut up! Think about what you've done! Do you realize you were wrong? Good, but don't beat yourself up about it! Parenting is hard! Now pop the hood!
The concept is so simple, yet powerful in its simplicity, enhanced by the fantastical element to make the journey that much more exciting and weighty. And of course, the animation. Holy shit, that animation. When Ben Beauclair said that he was taking cues from Hayao Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli, he was not kidding. Not only is the animation of that flying sequence breathtaking, but it really does look and feel like something out of a Miyazaki/Ghibli film. And say what you will about the initial backlash against Penny's true form, Lord knows I have, but that reception is a testament to how much the fans were invested in the story arc. For how entitled fans can get at times, it shows how passionate they are about the things they enjoy. And when you can get such impassioned responses out of people, whether for or against the creative direction in question, you know you've created something truly special. That's what the shell is. Special. As for the resolution, it's one of the most triumphant moments I've ever seen in all of animation.
That's not what you are. It's just how you feel. And this is how I feel.
Absolutely beautiful. In hindsight, this episode is even more special to me now than it already is. It's more special to me now that I'm in a relationship with my girlfriend. It's reminded me, in its own poignant and meaningful way, that there's always someone out there who will love you no matter what, no matter who you are, where you come from, or what you look like. So I've just gone at length praising the shell to heaven and back, explaining both the subjective and objective qualities that make it an animated diamond. And for a long time, it sat on the throne as the single greatest Gumball episode ever. But nowadays, it has to share that throne with another episode. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the choices. Oh, wow. Talk about amazing. This episode goes beyond description. To say that it is a masterpiece, a crown jewel in all of animation, it would not be enough, but I'm still going to take a gander, of course. If I haven't made it clear by now, the relationship amongst the Watterson family is one of my absolute favorite aspects of Gumball. They are a prime example of a family that's dysfunctional, wacky, and outrageous, yet likable, endearing, and relatable. While they are principally an escapist ensemble of characters, they are anthropomorphic animals after all, and their antics can range from mundane to over the top. They present a set of qualities that anyone can identify with. And these qualities go past just being idiosyncrasies. Their personalities are well defined and layered, and they complement one another because of it. Their ridiculous moments are resoundingly funny, and their emotional moments are genuinely resonant. No other episode expresses that better than the choices. This episode hits so many high notes from a vast array of standpoints, some of which you'd expect and some of which you wouldn't. The aforementioned exemplary storytelling as seen in the disaster in the rerun in the shell is present in this episode as well, and is arguably at its most potent here. But while those episodes are resolutive in their respective narratives, the choices is revelatory in its narrative and not as fantastical and over the top. This is, in essence, a backstory for Nicole, but it fills in a lot of the blanks that were present with regards to the Watterson family tree.
What would you do if you were me?
If I had done everything you've done, sleep till I'm 40.
I mean, what should I do with my life?
Maybe start living it?
It answers a number of questions that appear inconsequential, yet are commonly asked by the fans. What does Nicole even see in Richard? Why is Nicole so competitive and short-tempered? Where did she become such a proficient martial artist? What were the circumstances of Nicole and Richard's marriage and the eventual building of their family? In addition to answering these questions, the episode paves the way for even more questions that cultivate interest and keep the audience firmly engaged. I have a bunch of questions of my own, which I theorize in my own fanfiction, The Carbon Copy. By the by, just a little disclaimer, I'm not done with that story yet. The Choices answers these questions promptly and simply, but more importantly, satisfyingly. It accomplishes this through one of the best sequences I've ever seen in a cartoon. The sepia tone, film grain, and absence of dialogue are neat little touches that go very well with the episode. The use of old conventions in media fits this scene as the episode is more or less Nicole taking a trip down memory lane. And the music. I can't leave out the music. It's the very piece you're listening to right now, and I'm using it for a reason. It is incredible. Ben Lockett, give yourself a pat on the back. This is one gorgeous piece that I would like to learn and play on the piano. All of this put together makes for a scene that would feel right at home in a feature-length film. Heck, I even said in my review of this episode that from the visual and auditory beats of this sequence, it feels reminiscent of the first 10 minutes of Disney Pixar's Up, to the point where Ben and his crew might have actually taken cues from those first 10 minutes of that movie. And it's not like they shamelessly imitated Up. They knew how good that sequence was, took the best aspects of it, and put together their own rendition of it with their own Gumball branded touch, and for that, they succeed. I must also add that this episode effectively fixed the atrocity that is the hero, and that is saying a lot. That episode is still terrible, don't be mistaken, but I acknowledge that Ben went to great lengths to make the choices something of an apology for that. On a personal note, this episode really speaks to me. Like with the other praises I've touted thus far, I am not being hyperbolic with this statement. I identify with Nicole and Richard in this episode. Their circumstances are my family's circumstances, namely the premarital sex and pregnancy and the shotgun wedding. They all happened to my family, to my own mother and father. Their struggles were my parents' struggles. Their joys, their pains, their victories, their defeats, their ups, their downs, they all belong to my parents as well. And... excuse me. Sorry about that. The waterworks started again. Anyway, yeah. In my humble opinion, that level of relatability is proof positive of the quality of this episode and the show itself. Ben Beausoleil wanted to tell a story, and he thought that there's no better story to tell than one that you yourself know very well and have lived out. The entire Watterson family are already caricatures of Ben's own family, and there's no doubt in my mind that the story he told in The Choices is as personal and resonant to him as it is for his audience. That's the biggest and most important appeal of The Choices, and the shell for that matter. Ben took inspiration from what he personally knew, and he and his crew used it as a template for these episodes. They didn't need to rely on focus testing or scrounge around the mainstream to find a concept that seemed remotely compelling, when it might have ended up to be the exact opposite. And by creating something for themselves, as human beings, they've connected with their audience, their fellow human beings, on a deep and intimate level.
Actually, you know what? I wouldn't change a thing.
Food fight! Oh no, little man. This is a food war!
It's another thing that makes some of the greatest of all time, well, the greatest of all time. Thought-provoking, emotionally resonant, and beautiful, not because the creator tried too hard, but because they created something that they enjoy and in turn an audience could also enjoy. I am thankful for The Shell and The Choices for all these reasons. I am thankful to Ben Beausoleil for creating a masterpiece in Gumball. They will go down as bona fide household names in animation, and they have this pair of episodes, along with the rest of this list for that matter, to thank for that. The Shell and The Choices. 2 episodes that meet and exceed expectations, 2 experiences that you will never forget, 2 episodes that put the amazing in the amazing world of Gumball. That about does it for the top 10 episodes of the Amazing World of Gumball 2018 edition. It took all the energy I had, but if it means showering praise on one of my favorite shows of all time, it's worth it. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, because as exhausted as I am, I really did have fun doing this. We're not quite done with Gumball yet though. Season 6 is still underway, and I am going to review it, leading up to the series finale. I know, and trust me when I say that I'm just as sad as you are. But I'm gonna paraphrase the late great Dr. Seuss for a moment to give you all some sound advice. Cry not that this beautiful thing will come to pass, but instead, rejoice that it was so. As much as it breaks my heart that Gumball will end, I feel we should instead do our utmost to celebrate everything about the show. And once again, I would much rather that Gumball end on a high and dignified note than drag out to degrade into a desiccated carcass. With that said, the rest of 2018 will be jam-packed with both Gumball-related content and fresh content that I've been dying to try. I hope you're as excited about that as I am, and be sure to stay tuned. You can do so by liking and following my social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr. And be sure to check out my Discord server, Replicant D-execution, where you can chat with me and several fellow enthusiastic people about anything and everything, from cartoons, to games, to movies, to music, to life in general. Until the next video, I'm the one and only CR Martin, and thank you all for 2,000 subscribers. I hope to continue giving you all nothing but high grade and constantly improving content. And with that, I will see you all later. Ciao for now.
まだまだ寝れないよ私に知ると夜